All right, so guys, tonight we're talking about how we should be treating these first round picks. Scott, let's start with you with the trade though. So this is a 12-team superflex, PPR 1.75 for the tight end, start 10. You're a contender. Are you going Godwin in a 25 third or a late 25 first? Go ahead, man.
All right, so it's a late 25 first, which probably tracks with a team that's interested in Godwin. Even if it isn't your first, you've already said it's a late 25 first. Godwin has started out the season great. This is not a smart dynasty trade if you're talking about if things go south in a week or two for Godwin, it's not like you're going to be able to turn around and get anything close to this. He's already at the stage where it is very much, is he smashing today? If so, there's a market. If he's not, he's lost on your roster until the next window to be able to sell him. So we already kind of admit he's in that bucket. So for me, I'm not selling my 25 first, even though it's projected late. And I'll just paint the picture that when you have a projected late first, the longer you wait, the better your team is. It's easier to sell a pick when you're 2-1 than it is when you're 7-1. 7-1, everyone knows that's going to be the 111. That's going to be the 112. Like they're already counting on it being very late. So even though you say projected late, there is some value in selling your pick early because you might be able to get more based on the perception of it. I just don't want to fire my one shot today for Chris Godwin. I feel like I can get something. We have a cool tool called the Trinity if you want to use that. Like you can find receivers for cheaper than giving your first now. It feels like, Clay, I'd rather address it another way and just wait and hold my first a couple more weeks until maybe I really need to do it when there's more injuries, more buys, etc. And I have a better pulse on who's selling. There might be more available on the market in 3 or 4 weeks than there is right now. So I'm going to pass on this deal, the 25 first, and the ambiguity of what I can do with it later. It's too powerful for me to give up for Chris Godwin.
Sounds good, Shane. Let's just clean this up again. So it's a 12-team superflex, PPR 1.75 for the tight end, start 10. Are you, as a contender, giving your projected late 25 first for Chris Godwin and a 25 third?
No. Why don't I just go see if I can get his teammate, Michael Evans? I know Michael Evans did not have a good game last night. Or last week, Sunday, whatever day they played. It wasn't great, but he's a lot cheaper. He's a lot more attainable. Again, I'll give up a second. I don't want to give up a first for Chris Godwin just because he's running hot. I get that his 3 games have been really good, but if these 3 games came in week 6, 7, and 8, would you want to sell a first for him then? I don't think you would. I think it's amplified, magnified because, it's the beginning of the season. We have no other sample except for the 3 games. So now I'm going to pass on that.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting topic because we talk about the value of these 2025 firsts and how they're going to be the highest valued picks ever in existence when it comes to Dynasty. And you have contending teams who do something like this. They want to pick up a Chris Godwin just to solidify it. But is Chris Godwin then just taking the space of like Rashid Shaheed, where you're going to get maybe a couple extra points? And do you need to make a move like that? Should you be making luxury moves as a contender? Should you be selling as a contender? Is that where you trim and sell some of your talent? Scott, you always like to talk about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think if I'm shipping a 25 first, I have to be very careful with, do I buy a bailout with whatever asset I'm buying? And what I mean by that is, I'm not just buying points with the first. Even if I'm not buying the most points with my first, can I buy a lot of points or a good set of points that fit in the spot that I need? But I also get a little bit of leeway with the asset down the road. Like, can I envision that 6 months from now, the asset that I'm buying is still desirable? And if you know when 6 months from now is, that's probably the middle of draft pick season, meaning the guy I'm buying is probably going to have to be somewhat young, somewhat a decent perception already. It's not a player where we're like, came out of nowhere, Quentin Johnston. Okay, I'm going to bet that he's still going to be good. If he's not, then he's gone in the offseason. But there are other players where you go, okay, can I buy...
What about J-Mo?
Okay, J-Mo, you can throw in any receiver probably that you kind of know what they are. Maybe you don't think they're worth a first, but if you told me a healthy Devontae Smith or a healthy T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle, any of these guys, like I don't want to pay a first for them, but I can also bank that they're probably going to hold some sort of demand 6 to 12 months from now. So if I ever needed, let's say I get out on somebody like Devontae Smith because he spent most of this year injured or he doesn't have a great season, I still could probably get 2 seconds next year. A second is like I could sell him and it doesn't feel like I took a complete loss. Like if you buy a guy like Godwin or Evans and they fall off, you're like begging somebody to take them. And there's no demand for them. So
you're not getting any credit for them in a trade. Too.
Yeah. So if I could buy some points and flexibility, even for the next 6 to 12 months, that's when I'm like, all right, I'm willing to give up my first in this deal because it's not a complete zero-sum game if the player doesn't perform or get injured. Where if it's an older player or it's a running back, if it's a Kamara, Saquon Barkley, like you already know what happens if it goes bad. There is no, I'll buy in next year. It's like there may not be a next year.
Shane, how about this trade, man? So it's a 12-team Superflex PPR, 1.75 for the tight end, start 10. Are you giving your late 25 first? It could even be mid. Playoff 25 first for Brian Thomas Jr. right now.
No, I don't like that deal at all. First of all, if I'm giving up my 25 first, I'm assuming I want instant production, right? So even if I wanted a young player, I still want one that's giving me, I don't know, at least 14 points a week. And I like Brian Thomas Jr. He's not doing that, right? And the expectation for a rookie shouldn't even be that. I know that Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison are absolutely destroying the world right now, but that shouldn't be the expectation. 14 points a game for a rookie is, well, it's elite, to be honest with you. So Brian Thomas Jr. doesn't enter into that. I think he could get to 11 points a game, 10 points a game where it's a good season, but it's not enough to give up a first when that first isn't a needle mover on my roster. The player I'm getting back for that first isn't moving the needle in my win-loss column.
Scott, how do you treat first if you have multiples? Let's say you have 3 of them, so you feel like you can play around with 1 or 2 of them. Is that a bad way to look at it? Or does that give you, I guess, extra bets you can make? You're like, hey, I'm going to throw a dart with this projected late one. I've still got 2 in the hopper. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I do think, we've always talked about having more firsts or more flexibility gives you the ability to shop against what you already have, right? Like it gives you the ability to say, okay, I have 3 firsts. There's probably an element of tiering of how I view those picks. One, I know the one I'm willing to bet is going to be early, mid, late, whatever it might be. So you have the opportunity to shop around with them and see how other people view them. I've had situations where people will think, okay, I think that's going to be a mid first. Someone will say, oh, that team's awful. That's going to be an early first. I'm like, well, okay, can I exploit that? Other way around. Oh, hey, this team is 1-3. I'm looking at it like that could be an early first. And the response from the person that I'm trying to sell it to goes, oh, that team's stacked. They're going to turn it around. There's posturing because you have more options here. It's not just, I need a 25 first, and that's the only one you have. So you're either going to deal it or you're not. You have options, so you're playing your assets against themselves. So I am more likely in that situation to be willing to move 1 of them, maybe 2 of them. But the idea is I'm probably not moving all of them. The point of having 3 is to give myself a couple extra outs to fire during the season without completely gutting all of my picks. So I probably don't have 3 on accident on a roster where I'm like, I'm planning to spend all of these. Maybe Shane views it differently because he sometimes will be more aggressive with picks. But if I already have a team with 3, the plan probably isn't to blow all 3 of them before midway point of the season. I'm probably going to hold 1 back just because I have multiples in the first place for a reason.
I have 1 league where the most firsts I have is in 1 league. There's 4 firsts, 425 firsts. And I have been absolutely trying like a madman to move 2 of them.
To buy some.
Yes. And unfortunately, no one is selling yet. But that's probably actually, what's the word I'm looking for? What's a gift in disguise? That's not the phrase. What is the phrase? You have no idea.
That'll work.
It makes absolutely no sense. What's it, when something doesn't happen, but it's actually a good thing.
Is that a blessing in disguise, Shane?
That a blessing. Not a gift.
Nice.
Because, I'm going to have those picks to shop with later because no one will make moves right now because they are not smart enough or that's probably not the right word, but they're too prideful to admit that their seasons are going down the tubes already at 0-3.
There's a reason you have 4 already. The market is probably softer on wanting those picks compared to what they were because you have them already. So they might be less hesitant or more hesitant to buy them now because they've always been kind of lower on picks in general in that league. They may have to take a little more time to come around. So it is interesting when we've talked about it. When somebody has 7 firsts, it almost is to a point where they've cleaned out all of the buyers. People have already committed to selling. So the other people that don't have their picks sold yet are holding on to them tighter. And the people that you could sell to are the ones that have already sold them to you. And they're like, I already sold that pick to you. I'm not interested in buying it back at double the cost because my team sucked. So it feels like you actually kill your own market when you have all of these picks. So you do have to kind of weigh like, okay, what is the best deal? If I have 5 firsts, there might be a player I can get for 2 of them. Do I take it because there may not be another offer on those picks until draft time? You have to wait a long time to actually realize that.
Talk to me right now about jockeying your picks. So let's say you have a projected late one and you've spotted a first or there's a trade partner and you think that pick is going to be a few better. Okay, so a non-playoff first. How do you trade and like disguise moves like that to be able to move up in the first round? And here we are in late September. Scott?
The ultimate alpha move is just go to somebody else
Swap
and
first.
No. You be willing to add to your first to get theirs. Here, I'll give you... I mean, you try to hide it. You try to throw in a player that isn't worth a second, but I'll take a third back. But really what it's signaling is I would rather have your first than mine. The true alpha move is a second in your first for their first. And let them go, I can't do that. And then it's like you feel a little better. Like they just admitted you're better than them without actually doing it. Yeah. But sometimes people will accept that deal. And I've had it burn me before where I send it out. It happened to me once where I was going in a kick where I was sending those trades out and I got like 4 of those deals done. I ended up the 107. The person I traded with ended up the 108 and they got a free 207.
Second.
Because I was so like gung-ho that I'm going to have a playoff team that's going to get to the finals. And we both lost, ended up losing in the first round. And he got the higher pick than me. And I gave him a second. So that was one where it definitely could backfire if you think you're a little too sure of where you're going to finish.
Shane, how do you target first? Which ones do you think are going to be early? Do you look at the quarterbacks first? We were just looking at in a team in one of our listener leagues who is down Tua and down Skylar Thompson now. So obviously that's an attractive first that you receive offers for. But talk to me about how you kind of scope out what's going to be a good one.
I mean, I'm honestly looking at their wide receiver room first before I'm looking at their quarterback room. Obviously, I'm looking at their quarterback room. If they have Josh Allen and a clone of Josh Allen, well, then I probably don't want their first. But, and I talked about this in a Shane Says episode I just recorded, what's an elite quarterback? Like who's an elite quarterback? There's only a few of them. So there's not many rosters where I look at and I go, looking at the quarterback room that I can definitively say like, oh, that's a great quarterback room. Because
Andy Dalton and Malik Willis, Shane. Those are the two elite quarterbacks.
2 weeks ago, I would have made fun of everyone that's like, oh, I got Sam Darnold and, Malik Willis.
Sam
Darnold and Andy Dalton. I'd be like, bro, you're dead. You're dead in the water. Daniel Jones got back-to-back 20-plus point weeks. I'm not even looking at the quarterback room, bro. I'll look at your wide receiver room. I at least, for the most part, can kind of gauge which ones are going to continue to be good as opposed to the quarterback room. And I'll also look at the running back room just for funds. I'm not looking at the tight ends because they're all bad. So if they have any tight ends, good for them.